Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been several days since I've paid any damn attention to any other knife in my collection. Oh, the Factor has ruined me.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Water, fire, air, and dirt.
Fucking magnets, how do they work?
The nucleus has protons, which are positively charged, and it has neutrons, which have no charge.
Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome, and once again, today we're going to be taking a look at the Winterblade Factor. And this is a knife that I'm pretty sure everybody on the planet knows about at this point because it is one of the most talked about knives in the entire knife industry. And what I'd like to do today is something a little bit different than everybody else's videos. We're going to take a super deep dive on the knife, but we're also going to talk a lot about the designer and the maker, Bryan Winters, because I think that's every bit as important as the knife itself. But don't worry, we're going to get to all the knife stuff first, in case you're not in the mood for story time, and that's totally okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start talking about the knife right here. Winterblade Factor, the company name, the brand name, is actually Winterblade. It's not Winterblade Co. or any other derivation of the name, even though that's what he uses on Instagram. I confirmed this with Brian. The official brand name is Winterblade. So when we're talking about the knife, we're only going to be saying Winterblade. Now, this is the production variation of the custom Factors that he has made, and these are made by Bestech. So you're only going to pay $375 for this. Now, for a lot of people, $375 may sound like a lot of money, but for those of us that are a little bit more serious knife collectors, and we've spent hundreds and thousands and multiple thousands on individual knives, to get into something this wildly different, I think $375 is a very low price to pay because you're getting into a knife that is unlike any other knife you have ever owned, from its deployment to the way the blade is captured, to the way the action feels, to the way the action sounds, the way that it's held in the hand. Everything about this knife is wildly different. And it's not just hype. It really is completely different than anything else you've ever had. What makes this knife the most unique? Well, it's going to be what's right inside of there. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus. And that is going to be magnets. So you've got two magnets here, and what those magnets do is they hold the blade in similar to what a detent does. Now, I'm not going to call them a detent. I'm not going to call them a magnet detent because there is no detent ball. There is no friction being applied to the blade. Once you have broken free of those two magnets, and before you engage the lock, everywhere in between, there is zero friction. There is nothing pressing on this blade. The only friction you have is the bearings in the pivot, and that is it. And once those magnets take hold, it gets sucked in super hard, super crazy. I gotta tell you, man, this knife is absolutely insane. Now, in my opinion, and this is the way that I categorize the knife, and Brian doesn't, and you may not, I don't consider this a standard EDC folder. I don't consider it a flipper. It's not really even a standard pocket knife to me because of the shape of it, the way the blade is ground, how thin it is, the overall aesthetics of it. To me, it's a utility knife. like a razor knife, like a box cutter. Think of the Rexford Rut or the Chavez Chub. Except now with this, you've got a ground blade instead of a razor blade attached to the knife or inserted into the knife. And if you look at it like that, I think you'll fall in love with it a lot more quickly. You'll look past the ergonomics. This is not the most ergonomic knife in the world. It doesn't feel bad, but it doesn't feel like a standard knife in your hand. You'll look past the midship placement of the push bar that acts as a flipper. And you'll look past the oddity of the overall design because you're not trying to compare it to a regular old standard knife that you may have in your collection. It is wildly different in every aspect, from the way it feels to the way it handles to the way it acts. Just everything is so very different. But that's exactly why I got curious about it, and that's exactly why I am madly addicted to it. If I could own 10 of these knives in different variations, I assure you that I would. I like it that much. I will be investing in probably one or two more of these for certain, especially at this crazy low price that they are. Now, everybody and their brother is giving you specs, and I'll give you the specs, of course, but we're just going to put them right over here. I'm not going to bother to read them off. Everybody else has done that. I'm sure you guys know how to read, so there they are on the screen. What I want to talk about is what makes this knife unique and why I like it so much. First, the unique harmonics of this super thin blade when it hits full lock are unlike any other sound that any other knife in the world makes. It sounds kind of like a DuPont Line 2 lighter, where when you flip that lighter open, it has a little piece of metal inside the lid and it goes ting, and it reverberates a little bit every time you flick it open. Now, the special ping doesn't mean anything, but it's still wonderfully delightful and special, and it makes this knife what it is. Let's give you guys a listen to it. It's just crazy. Now, my Jaeger M has a similar sound to it when I'm playing with it. However, you can't hear it on the microphone. All you hear is the thunk of it locking up and hitting the blade stop. You don't get to hear that wonderful, the wonderful harmonics that it has, because this is so much more pronounced. Now, that sound is, when I talked to Bryan about it, he says the sound actually comes from the strength of the lock. When this thing locks up, between the thinness of the blade, the strength of the lock, and this top bar of the open window, in combination with this metal locking block here. All of these things work together. So when this thing locks up, you're hearing that reverberation coming from this top bar in the window. And it's just unlike anything else. And if you want the best possible sound, you want to hear that clickety-clack ping, make sure that the lock is pulled back, because the first sound you're going to hear is that unlocking. There's a little click. If you don't do that, you're just going to get just the opening sound. I like that clickety-clack. You hear that? Try that again. There's something about that. It's really cool. Okay, anyway, enough with the sounds. The open area in the handle. Now, this was the first thing that I was concerning myself with before I handled the knife, because I saw that this actually opens up. And I'm like, man, that open area in the handle, it's kind of like your butthole. You don't want to stick your finger in it, and also like your butthole, if your finger does go into it, you're in deep shit. That is a very, very, very sharp blade. So I was really concerned about that, but I was concerned for no reason, because the magnet that's embedded in here meets up to the magnet in the carbon fiber side, and it locks in really well. Like, you really have to make a conscious effort to open that up, and if it's anywhere near that other magnet, it just sucks it right back in. I don't see a way for it to get snagged as it's going into the pocket, because that's all pretty smooth. And even if it hit, it's just going to do that. It's not really going to do anything. Now, let's talk about how it all works, because that's really why we're all here. All right. So what you've got here are two magnets set into the frame. One is the titanium side, one into the carbon fiber side. Then you have these two polymer guides. I don't know if they're polymer or Delrin resin, but whatever they are, see if I can get the camera to focus. All they're there for is to keep the blade aligned so the magnet doesn't pull the blade to one side or the other. And you'll see that it leaves a little mark. See right there, that little rub mark? Which is why, by the way, I've asked him, he can't do like a black DLC blade because these are they would rub through the finish over time. Now, I've opened and closed this probably a good 300, 400 times. So I've got that little smudge there. It doesn't actually scratch it because it's softer than the steel. So it actually does wipe away. But it does hit that to align the blade to keep it centered. So those are what keeps your blade closed as if they were a D10. Now, the locking mechanism is just as unique. If you look very closely, you'll see attached to this little green handle here, there's a round section. That's what he calls the hockey puck. That has a magnet inside, and then embedded inside of the carbon fiber here is that silver disc right there. That's the other magnet. This magnet is attracted to that magnet. So how does it work? Right back here in the tang of the blade, right there is where that locks into. Okay, so the lock jumps in there. So as the blade is opening, it has this large rounded area that will actually push the lock out of the way slightly. And then as it approaches that step, it allows one magnet to suck the other magnet in. And that's what creates the lock itself. So now it's locked in solid. It won't move. And I asked very specifically, because one of the biggest mysteries, and honestly something that I was a little worried about as well, because this is a new locking mechanism. He calls it the M-lock for a magnetic lock. I said, exactly how strong is this lock? How far did you test it? And he says, this lock has been tested to withstand 150 pounds of force. And he only stopped at 150 because he didn't want to destroy his prototype. But honestly, I mean, 150 pounds is insane and far more abuse than I think you're ever going to subject your knife to, especially one of this size. He also uses two stop pins in here for the blade for added strength. So when he says that this knife was designed and built to be used, he wasn't lying. He wasn't making it up. It's actually, we don't consider something this skinny and this lightweight to be overbuilt, but he has overbuilt the internals, the stop pins and the lock. They're actually overbuilt far beyond what this knife is really ever going to need. And you know what? That's pretty damn awesome. So let's talk a little bit more about why this knife is so addicting. The action feels unlike anything else, whether you reverse flick it, whether you slow roll it, thumb flick it, or you use the flipper. It feels completely different than anything else. It rockets open because it has no friction. There's no lock bar pushing a detent against the blade to create friction. And once you've popped the lock and gravity takes over, it just drops down, and it does it without blade bounce. Think of the most drop-free blade you've ever had. Think of something like maybe a Grimsmo Norseman, for example. When you unlock it and that blade drops all the way, it'll bounce, and sometimes it'll bounce back up out of the detent. This doesn't do that because the magnets are attracting the blade and they hold it in. And I guarantee you, once you get this knife, you're going to spend all day flipping it, flicking it, playing with it, doing all that crazy shit with it, because it's a wonderful feeling and it's a wonderful sound. It's so mechanical. It's so cool. And it gives you that joy thinking back to when you first got into knives, all the little things about different folding knives that you really enjoyed that now you take for granted because, most knives are all the same, right? They're all based on something similar, whether they're a frame lock or a button lock or a liner lock or whatever else. They're all going to be very similar within their own categories. This is now its own new category, the magnetic knife. So everything that you do with it feels so different that there's a fun factor and an excitement to it that you may not have felt in a long time when it comes to knives. And to me, that's pretty fucking exciting. I really, really dig that. I haven't been this excited about a knife in a long time, and I get excited about a lot of knives. I really do. I really enjoy them, but man, there's just something different. By the way, I asked him specifically, what do you call this? Because I was calling it a plunger and all these other different things. He says he calls this the flip lever. So if you want to use Bryan's specific, part names, this would be the flip lever. Just so you know, it's up to you what you want to call it, but that's what he calls it. And I think we should probably go by that, right? Now, for those wondering, there is a mini possibly in the works. Basically, people have asked for different sizes. They've asked for a smaller version. They've asked for an XL version. And it comes down to this. His wife likes the idea of a mini and wants a mini for herself. So guess which is going to come first? Yep, smart man. Make the wife happy. So there will most likely be a smaller mini version that'll be coming available. Oh, I can't wait for that. And there may possibly be an XL-sized variant coming down the road at some point because he does recognize people have been asking for that. Now, let's talk a little bit about Bryan because I think that's also every bit as important as this incredible knife. As a kid, Bryan had an interest in creating and building things, and his dad had a huge garage just full of tools that allowed him to experiment and learn. He dabbled in a few things, but he found his first passion was in RC cars. So he started building fiberglass bodies, he started building motors, and he started driving and building all these RC cars. And for those that have done that, that can be an enormously expensive hobby between building them and wrecking them and rebuilding them and modifying them and everything else. But he's always had a love for weapon-like things like bows and slingshots and knives. So it was kind of just a natural progression for him to take his curiosity of building and fabricating and modifying things and taking it to his other love of knives. So that's exactly what he did, and that's what he does full time now. Now, what I was wondering was, is he an engineer? Did he go to college to be an engineer or something like that? Because if you look at his Instagram, he has crazy inventions. This is, I don't want to say this is the mildest, but this is only one of many insane ideas that he's come up with. But no, he didn't go to college to be an engineer. As a matter of fact, he quit college early just because he wanted to strike out on his own and do his own thing. And that's actually kind of cool. So he started, I think he said something about he was making custom aquariums was his first major full-time job, and then he started developing jigs and other things for people that do that line of work to make their work easier and more repetitive and more accurate and things like that. So again, he took that knowledge and brought it into knives, and I mean, he created stuff from scratch here, guys. There's just nothing else that was like this on the market for him to mimic, from the lock to, everything. Nothing on this is like anybody else's knives. Let's just be perfectly honest. Some of the other things that are coming in the future, if you're in batch 2 of the pre-orders, which I believe as of right now is still currently live, there are going to be some Magna Cut options. There'll be some Timascus clips. And in the future, he's going to be playing with some different materials and finishes as well. He's trying to decide on what to do there. But also in batch 2, all of your magnets are going to be removable. So I know some people had expressed concern that, well, what happens if a magnet gets damaged or something happens or whatever else? They're going to be made where all the magnets are removable. and he's going to drop down to just one of the blade guides instead of having two. And he says not only is it going to be great for just replacing the magnets if anything were to happen, but the other benefit is he's going to offer different magnet strengths. And that's going to allow you to custom tune your own deployment, your own detent feel, as it were. So you're going to have the option, if you're the kind of person that likes a really super crazy, strong, hard detent, you'll be able to buy stronger magnets. If you like a lighter detent, then you'll be able to put in lighter magnets. And guys, this is right out of the gate. He's already going to be offering these unique modifications, and I think that's kind of neat. So I think I described well enough how the locking mechanism works. Again, it's not like an axis lock where you're just simply pulling a bar out of a notch that's cut into the frame. You have a magnet that is attracting this other one there. So it's always going to lock up. And he says he's had to play with different strengths of the magnets here, because if the magnet was too strong, it would literally take two hands to pry that lock open, and I don't think anybody would have enjoyed that. Let's give you some size comparisons here to some other knives that I own and that I've shown you guys on the channel. We'll start with the Jaeger M, since I already had that one pulled out. Put them butt to butt. A lot of people have gotten Jaeger M's in the past month because they just started delivering again. So there is your look compared to the Jaeger M. Overall, it is it's not significantly smaller, but it is smaller. So we'll go up against a smaller knife, and that's going to be the wonderful EMP EDC Nimble, which you guys know I absolutely adore. And those are virtually identical in their overall size, but you're going to have a difference in the thickness of the blade stock. The overall thickness of the handle isn't too terribly different. What else do we have here? The Avian Knives Atlas. A lot of you guys got in on that pre-order. The pre-order is still open. So those of you that have gotten your Atlas in the mail, there you go. Or you bought one of the prototypes. There's your size comparison there. Let's see what else. Against the full-size Nimble X in the 3.5-inch blade. So it is considerably smaller than what many people traditionally carry as an EDC size, which would be a 3.5-inch blade. Well, don't worry, we're going to do weights on here as well. The amazing Cybertrix. There is the comparison between it and the Cybertrix. And yes, I am still very much in love with that knife. That's a lot of fun. And something that's quite a bit smaller. A lot of people also own the Vero Engineering Mini Synapse. Only just a teeny tiny little bit bigger than the Synapse. Now let's get you some weights. Let's get an idea of what it weighs and how it compares to others in this category. So as we put this down, it is 3.3 ounces. It changed. 3.3 ounces. There was 4.3, so a full ounce lighter than the Jaeger. 3.7 ounces, significantly lighter than that. 4.3, significantly lighter than the Nimble X. And 2.6, so the Vero is just a little bit lighter. 2.6 again versus 3.3. So there's your sizes, there's your weights, and all that kind of good stuff. My overall thoughts, what do I think of it? Let's give you some close-up looks while I'm doing that. The way I look at it, you're getting into something wildly different. This may not be your choice for an everyday carry. It may not replace every typical knife that's in... Excuse me, hold on one second here. Oh, it's going to irk me. It may not replace every knife that's in your collection for everyday carry, but I think it's going to be wildly unique. I love the futuristic font they used for the Factor name, and I love this color combination. Obviously, that's why I chose it. I really like this bee-blasted matte finish, the titanium against the bright green, toxic green G10, G10, and G10, and then against that black 2x2 weave carbon fiber, which I have not found any voids. We're in macro mode here, and if there's any voids, you're going to see it in 4K macro mode, and nope, I don't see any. There are only two downsides to this entire knife for me personally. One, it's the way the pocket clip is built. In most everything, I haven't had a problem. Jeans, no problem at all. But cargo shorts, I had a problem pushing it in over the lip of the pocket of my cargo shorts. Because the cargo shorts, the lip around the pocket is thick, but cargo shorts, they're a bit looser in the fabric and in the fit than jeans typically are. So it kind of wants to pull and tug down on the pocket before it goes in. So you kind of have to do this number, which I don't do with my knives. I only push them in and pull them out. I don't like anything that I have to pry. But aside from that one piece of attire, it works fine in everything else. So it's only kind of a half knock. And the other knock I have is the fact that you're going to get one, possibly two, of these blemishes on the blade because of the blade guides. That's just the way it is. That is going to be there. If he ever does something where these are in Damasteel, that'll be hidden in the pattern and the polish. You probably wouldn't see it. But in pretty much every other blade material and finish, you'll see it. Stonewash would be a great option for this. If you did a stonewash like this, a nice bright stonewash, then that would mask that that blemish. But that's going to be there as long as he's using these guides. And even though he said he's going to drop down to one guide instead of two, it's going to be on the carbon fiber side, he said. So that's the side that's going to rub. So do keep that in mind. If you're the kind of person that's so anal retentive that any blemish on your blade is going to drive you nuts, this is not going to be the knife for you. I apologize. But if you can get over that, you're going to be just fine. I like the clean, just crisp look of the overall design. It is a bit futuristic, which I dig. And that's really the only cons. Does it feel like a normal knife in the hand? No. It's skinny and it's tall. So it does have a weird feeling in the hand. But the finger choil works great. You can choke up nicely. It's very easy because of the length of the blade to get to the tip of the blade. So if you're really cutting something with the tip, or you're digging something out, you're going to have that control that you can just drop your finger right there on the corner. Now that we know that the lock can withstand 150 pounds, I don't have any concerns of doing that, of putting my hands here and applying pressure, because I know it's not going to collapse as long as I don't pull back on the lock. Which would be like anything else. Don't unlock the lock when you're holding it. That's it. Very simple. Completely addictive. There is everything about this I enjoy. And I'm so glad that I have this now. And I think it's going to ruin me just a little bit for a lot of other knives. But the great thing is it doesn't have a traditional design. Excuse me, it doesn't have a traditional design. So because of that, I'm probably not going to have too much of an issue, where it's going to battle for pocket time over this or over this or over this. It is unique enough that I don't really sense that. I just can't wait to see what else he does in the future, man. This is it's too cool for school, man. Really, really is. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover here. Yeah, that was pretty much it. If you have any questions about how the magnets work, again, the placement of the magnets are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have 6 magnets overall within here. When it comes to the packaging, I didn't show the packaging, but it's I showed it in my sneak peek. But you're going to get the nice plastic case, which is marked with the brand name, or excuse me, the model name on both sides, which I've never seen before. Nice laser cut foam. You'll get basically an instruction sheet to teach you how to properly maintain your knife. And because you do have magnets, there are some new things that you're not familiar with. Like, hey, what happens if I get metal shavings? I'm around in a workshop one day. I'm in a machine shop and I get metal shavings in there. I don't want to scratch up my blade. He tells you what to do about that. It's very simple. Once you take the knife apart, take a piece of sticky tape and dab it onto the magnets. It'll take the metal right off. The other thing that you're going to get is this metallic craftwork pen. What is that for? you can apply it right in there on the tang of the blade if you get some lock stick. I had lock stick when I first got it. My lock stick is gone after just a few days, so I didn't have to do it. But it's just like the old Sharpie trick we've done for, years and years and years on frame locks. You put it at the point where the lock interacts, and it gives it a buffer while it's breaking in and prevents it from sticking. That's it. That's really all there is to it. I have thoroughly enjoyed every minute with this knife, and now that I don't have to photograph it or video it anymore, I can now just carry the living shit out of it, and I don't care if I get marks all over it, and I can get tape gunk on my blade and stuff like that. I am so excited. Oh, God, it's so much fun. This is one of those things that I think every industry needs. You need that one product that will come out of nowhere and get you excited again. I mean, I've never lost my excitement for collecting knives, but this one has renewed my childlike excitement because I'm somewhat jaded at this point. I've had so many good and bad knives run through my hands, and at some point, a lot of knives end up just being the same thing, just different blade shapes or different finishes or some different materials. But this is wildly different. It's like discovering knives all over again because you're discovering this mechanism. You're learning about how it operates. You're getting a feel for it every day. And every time you pick up this knife and you hold it up against another knife, you realize just how different it really is. And it's nuts. And it's something that I haven't felt in a long time. Think of, maybe you went for years owning just standard frame lock knives, and then you got your first out the front automatic. Even if it wasn't a great knife, you had this wonderful fascination with the opening and closing and how fast it was and how effortless it was and how different it was. And you had this renewed enthusiasm because it was just that much different. This is as different to every other knife in the world as an out the front is to a frame lock. I mean, it's that different. And yeah, I do kind of like using that flipper mechanism. Now, he did say for those that don't have an interest in flipping, that are just going to be reverse flicking or thumb flicking or whatever else, that he is going to offer a block that goes in here. It's going to be a carbon fiber block that replaces this, and it'll be locked in place. It will not push down. It will not push to activate opening of the blade. It'll just be a solid block that's locked in place. So for those that want to use it as a standard folding knife, then you'll have that option as well. And I wouldn't expect that to be expensive at all. Good luck taking this apart and getting it back together without the magnets attracting to each other and getting sucked out and doing all kinds of goofy shit. There's little ways to do it. Check out Nick Shabazz's video. He does, well, you get to watch him screw up a lot as he puts it back together, and then he figures out the best way to put it back together. So that's my thoughts on this amazing knife. I am super stoked in a way that I really haven't been in a long time. And I honestly feel that a lot of you guys are too. Is it a gimmick? Yes and no. I mean, there is a certain bit of gimmickiness to it just because it is that much different than every other knife. But it's not gimmicky because the differences in the way this knife operates, it's not different just to be different. It's different for a purpose. And there's no shortcomings to it. A gimmick would be, I'm going to do something dramatically different, and it doesn't really make it any better. As a matter of fact, it could even make it more complicated or worse. This gives you a better action than 90% of the knives you're ever going to hold. And that detent, again, it's not a detent, but the strength of the magnets holding the blade in is super strong. So you didn't lose anything by having this different idea. The lock is crazy strong. And look, I barely opened that up and it still went to full lock because that magnet sucked that magnet over. That may not have been enough to activate a frame lock or a button lock or anything else as weakly as I just did that. But that magnet sucked it right in. So yeah, this is going to be a constant companion, and I want more and more and more. I want a whole collection. I want a whole drawer full of factors. All right, I'm going to get off of here before I start touching myself on camera. Thank you guys for joining me as always. If you'd like to support the channel, please do so. That would be wonderful. Join my Patreon down below. And hey, you get to win cool free knives and EDC gear. So it's a great trade-off for as little as $5 a month. I'm out of here for now. Thank you guys for joining me as always. And I'll catch you on the next video.